There is something that is not well understood, I don't think, and that's ownership. And I'm deliberately slowing down to talk about this because this is pretty serious stuff. And it's not being taught to really, probably almost anybody. Ownership is one of these things that defeats poverty, right? It's why the WEF and bankers in general and governments don't want you actually owning anything. And I don't know how else to tell you this, but so many people in general have been ill educated, to put it mildly, on the idea of ownership. Ownership implies responsibility. And without ownership, responsibility tends to go away. When responsibility goes away, well, then pretty much everything else goes with it. That's kind of how that works. So the idea of what we loosely refer to in the US of ownership is not really the type of ownership that I'm talking about. I'm talking about actual ownership, where you don't keep paying perpetual rent to either a government or a banker or to a landlord bro. Keep in mind, landlord bros are effectively sort of the slave drivers of society. That's really that really is. If you want to think about it in terms of like a slave and owner relationship, well, the owner doesn't want to actually have to keep all of his slaves in line, right? That's work, right? That takes work to do that. And slave owners don't want to do work. That's the whole point of owning slaves, is that you don't have to do any work. You want to be able to sit around and do nothing, right? Or do whatever you want to do. And so you employ slave drivers. Your slave drivers are slightly better taken care of slaves than the other slaves, right? That's how this game is played. So some people, of course, are going to be well taken care of. This is no different than any other system. The Soviets did the same thing under communism. Even Maoist China, and even now, there's always going to be a class of people who are well taken care of, and will do anything. They don't really care. They're ambivalent to anybody out there, to anybody else's situation. They just know that they're taken care of, and that's it. As long as they're taken care of, they don't really give a shit what happens to anybody else, right? There's a lot of people like that. And you're never going to get rid of them. You will never get rid of them. There isn't an amount of I can't say the word, I guess, on TikTok. So, but there isn't a genetic way to get rid of them. There isn't, because they will always crop up. That's just how it is. So the best thing you can do is have ownership and keep them away from you. And the way you do that is by owning your property, owning your existence. And the U.S. used to be all about that. That's what the country was founded upon. It was not founded upon, where can I find the cheapest rent? No, in fact, that's what several wars were fought about right here in this country, between the natives, in fact, who and the blue coats, the Union Army, because the Union Army, when they were done conquering the South, they had nowhere else to go, so they went west and kept right on conquering, because, like, what do you do with all these guys? So notice that the South didn't really have any designs on conquest of the West. Just saying. So anyway, a lot of wars were fought about that because they didn't want to continually pay rent to somebody else for the permission to live, and or taxes fits in the same category. Property taxes fit in the exact same category. So there you have it. Ownership implies responsibility. Ownership, at least in this country, in the practical sense, doesn't really exist. Not in a long time. People don't have land patents. They don't own a allodial title to their property. So rest assured, for my commie followers who say, well, that's the problem, man. We just got to get rid of ownership, man. No, what'll happen is someone will always own it. It just won't be you. Like, there is no getting around this. If you don't own it, someone else will. That is the rules, okay? So that means that it behooves you to own your piece of this country or this world, okay? Wherever you are. It behooves you to do that, right? And I don't know that has been. In fact, I'm supremely confident that has been deliberately omitted from all education. Where the idea of actual ownership. Well, but land is too expensive. No, it really actually isn't. It is in terms of fiat currency because it artificially pushes the price up in terms of like dollars, for example, in the U.S. And that's because you have your slave drivers, your landlord bros, that are willing to keep borrowing these insane amounts of money. If nobody were willing to borrow these insane amounts of money, then all of these prices collapse. All of them. And there is no argument for this, by the way. This is why I don't get a lot of static. You'll notice that I have some people, weirdos, every now and again, they'll say, you're wrong, and then that's it. You never hear from them again. Dude, it's because they don't have an actual case against this. Everything I'm telling you is like ancient law. This goes back thousands of fucking years, dude. Thousands of years. People have known this for a very long time. It's just that you haven't been taught it. I'm talking to younger people in general. But a lot of people have not been taught this. If you don't own it, someone else will. That's why you're supposed to own it. And this is, once again, when the U.S. was founded, it was kind of a clean slate because the indigenous folks that were here, their numbers had dwindled to almost nothing, right? There was a huge plague that had come by. And before you say smallpox blankets, first of all, germ theory didn't exist back then, so shut the fuck up about that because it didn't fucking exist. Nobody knew. They still thought people got sick because of miasmas, okay? So germ theory didn't exist, and that was actually about 400 years before anybody got here, all right? So any of the so-called white Western Europeans got here, that this had happened long before they showed up. So there was just really a lot of land available. And part of common law is that, well, look, if nobody's using it, then you can set up and conquer it, right? You can claim it by right of conquest. They're trying to get rid of that now. I don't know if you noticed this, but that's very clever, very craftily, and I've covered this a couple of times recently. They're very, very slowly trying to get rid of the idea of common law and go back to feudal law, which is just whoever has the most nukes gets to claim ownership. Whoever has the most idiotic followers, military followers that will do whatever you command them to do, right? Whoever has the most drone power and what have you. That's just bullshit like that. So, in a nutshell, if you don't own it, someone else will. My suggestion is that you start ruminating on this idea, start meditating on this idea of ownership, and really start thinking about it.